there's quite a number of things that will prohibit you from getting a pistol permit. And you know, I'm going to try to find it. The prohibitors for pistol permit is, and I'm going to read them because there's so many and we don't deal with them every day. Our pistol sergeant is not here, but they have to undergo, they have to come in first of all and show ID, a picture ID. And that means if they have a driver's license or if they have ID from the Department of Motor Vehicles. That ID and the address that you give have to be the same. And when you give that address and your ID, then we start what we call a process of going through the court records, NCIC. There's several of these things. Let me see. I want to make sure I tell you because, like he said, it's education. You have to be a resident of North Carolina. You have to appear in person. You have to complete the application. This is to get a pistol permit now. And you have to be 18 years of age. Now, the 18-year-old cannot buy from a dealer, but he can buy from an individual. So the criminal history is checked through the courts, through the SBI, the FBI. The only real bad thing about the pistol permits is if you have a mental challenge, somebody that comes in and doesn't tell you the truth. There's a block you have to check. And if he checks he's okay, we can't really check his mental status until he signs a form, and there's not a requirement for him to sign a form on the pistol permits. There is on the concealed carry. So do you understand that? That's the thing that I wish we could get a little bit more control over. The problem is the numbers of pistol permits that we issue, it would tie up, I guess, mental health and the hospitals and everything else. But to me, that's more important than just letting a person walk out on the street and get a gun. Any questions? Jerry, anything you guys want to add?
I would like to say something. I'm from Granville County, and I spoke to our sheriff and our deputy sheriff before I came down here tonight, and they said, let the people keep the guns. That's their
Well, let me tell you something, folks. Nobody's going to take your guns. I can tell you that. I can stand here and tell you that. I'm about like Kerry. I'll quit first, but nobody's going to take your guns. That's almost impossible. If you look all over the country, this country was, the founding fathers said you have the right to carry arms. And the law-abiding citizen is not going to tolerate somebody taking their guns. That's the bottom line. I know a lot of people's on emotional high, and a lot of people get concerned when something like this happens, and there's a tragedy, no question. But they will not take your guns unless you're a felon or somebody that does something stupid. Then you need to lose your gun.
I'd also like to finish adding that I'm the mayor in Granville County, and I'm presenting this to our board Tuesday night.
Well, thank you for being here, Mayor. We appreciate that. Here in Wake County last year, we had 22,000 plus pistol permits. That's a lot of background checks, a lot of mental health checks if it goes to that. But to me, it's that important.
I have a
Question?
We subscribe the law, the hypothetical law, that would be so egregious to the Second Amendment that you would decide not to enforce that law, and that you would not hand your badge in for, so that you could continue to not enforce that law. Describe that law. That would be the final draw, the final line in the sand, where you would say, no way, you can have the law in the book, but I ain't enforcing it. Describe this law.
Well, you can what if anything. Like we said earlier, I think all three sheriffs said the same thing. We only enforce the law. What happens is that law goes through our Congress, our Senate, right on through the judiciary. Everybody knows how that happens. As a sheriff, we are sworn to uphold the law in the United States Constitution and North Carolina, those of us in North Carolina. So if it comes down, and this law has been tested by the courts, and it's constitutional, if we don't uphold our part, then we can get voted out of office. So that's when you make the decision.
Sheriff Harrison, let me ask you, you said earlier that, and you're intimating now, and I would agree, that the sheriffs are obliged to enforce constitutional laws. Would you hold that the Supreme Court has the sole authority to decide that? Because I think we saw, and I'm not getting political here, but I think there are people on all sides of the Obamacare issue, and the Supreme Court says it's constitutional. So if there were a law about firearm ownership and the Supreme Court said it was constitutional, under those certain circumstances, could you see people being disarmed in your county?
The question is, if the Supreme Court rules that the law is constitutional, could you see people being unarmed, I think he said, in Wake County? By law, yes, because the Supreme Court is the ones defined it and says it's constitutional. That's not going to happen, folks. I can tell you that's not going to happen. And you can put your thumb down all you want to, but I'm just telling you the law. I'm here to tell you what the law is. I can't interpret the law any other way than what is written. So that, you know, we're not going to get in a peeing contest, as the old saying goes. I'm just trying to tell you what we are. We will do what's right, because if we don't need to be in, we don't need to have this badge on. And I've been doing this 45 years. But I can tell you, folks, they're not going to take your guns.
However, sir, when a law is passed by Congress, the law is enforced, correct?
Well, if somebody challenges it, that's when it goes through the
All right,
proper process.
now the law is challenged, and it takes 2 years to get to the Supreme Court. What happens in the time?
They're not going to take your guns. It's going to be a stay. Good example is these poker games, the sweepstake games. You see what's happened there. That's a good example. And right now, I don't know what Jerry and Kerry's doing, but I'm not doing anything because the law's not clear.
All right, what I want to ask.
Do the various different sheriff's departments maintain electronic records of gun registrations? And if they do, how secure are those? Could they be accessed by the Fed and just kind of go around?
Well, anything, once you get a pistol permit, folks, remember this. It's not that Kerry, Jerry, and myself want to give it to WRL or Channel 11, who's here tonight, and Channel 14, whoever is here. That's public information. We don't have any control over that. And that's something that you have to take up with your legislators. There's one standing back there. Talk to him tonight before he leaves. But that's public information. We get the blame for it, but that's what the law says. And answer to your question, no, all of it's not on electronic devices. I'm sure some of the eastern counties are not.